Barbara Rogers.
So, in thinking about what I wanted to talk with you about tonight, I was thinking it's such a miracle that we're all here. I am grateful to the Westcotts. I think this program they have to bring people in from the community, let you know who your neighbors are, is such a beautiful thing. For me, it's an opportunity to share my life with the idea that I did what I could, but the rest was luck. You put yourself in the right places as far as you know, because you're a kid, or you're new to the field you're in. And what strikes me more and more now that I'm in my golden years is that just arriving in the world is a miracle. That sperm met that ovum and that you exist. It's like a miracle. And I look at my life as this incredible gift of even on days where things have not gone that well or where I almost lost my life. We all have days like that. You're in that accident, in your car, on the water, all the places where life could end if you weren't lucky. And so here we are in this room together tonight. So I think what I want to talk to you about is how in the world did I get from this little house in this town that has, it's not even a town, it's like a farming village, maybe 500 people. And here I am in Tucson, Arizona, just recently retired professor from the University of Arizona. I never knew anything like this was going to happen to me when I started out. I thought I was going to be some kind of artist because it was clear from the beginning that that's what I loved. So I'm in my grandma's garden. Everybody worked. I swear, if you were 2 years old, they figured out a job that you could do. So they didn't have sitters. My mom was so young, and so was my dad, and it was the Depression. I'm born in 1937, and she is 18, and he's 20-something. And so they went back to work as soon as they could and turned me over to first my grandparents and then my great aunt and uncle. And so I feel that was luck because they had so many skills. And they were in their 70s, and I learned to draw early enough that I could sell my drawings for Hershey bars to the boys. As long as the girls had breasts, that was worth a Snickers bar or a Hershey. So this is this old couple who just tried to teach me everything they knew. So they're in their 70s. That must not have been that easy, running around after me. So they gave me jobs. My uncle, great uncle, was a pattern maker. So somebody would come to him with a machine in their head, and he would help them figure out what the gears were. And then I watched him draw the gears and then turn that drawing into wood, and then that wood into steel. So he demystified a lot of things for me early on. Mom, Dad, my sister Carol. I'm just going to say at this point, my sister Carol and I are only 18 months apart. It was an argument probably from the moment she learned how to talk. I would go to my grandmother and I would tell her my current tale of woe, usually about my sister. And she gave me the best advice anybody has ever given to me. And it stays with me. She'd pat my little skinny hand and say, Thank you for sharing that with me, Barbara. Now let's not dwell on it. I got it. Get it off your chest and move on. I'm the geeky-looking girl in the back row with all the tall boys, and that is my 8th grade teacher. Her advice to me was read the New York Times. Who in Ohio in the 8th grade has to get money together to subscribe to the New York Times? But we did. And her favorite thing was, some of these people in the world are born to lead, and some of them are born to follow. And you're both at different times in your life. Try to figure out which one you are at the moment. Very early on, lead, follower, get out of the way. She reminded me, even though I could draw, that I also had a brain. So when I got this offer to go to a vocational high school in Canton, Ohio, funded by this fabulous family named Timken, I jumped at the chance because I could study commercial art all day long. She felt that was a terrible idea, that they were taking the cream of the 8th grade classes and putting them into a vocational school where they'd end up working for Timken Roller Bearing Factory. So I went to Timken High School. I've never regretted it, probably because that's Timken. I had my identity set at 13 years old as an artist. And since it was a totally male world, I never had a woman teacher in the field that I'm in. Knowing that I had these skills that I learned in commercial art, lettering, doing serious drawings with a India ink pen where you couldn't change your mind. Those were all wonderful things. And when I graduated from Ohio State and then got my graduate degree from Berkeley, I had both of them photographed and went to visit her and took her my degrees. And, you know, gave her my love, but also the caution that you have to sort of choose your words when you're talking to girls and don't diminish their possibilities, because the whole world is open to everybody that pretty much gets the opportunity to study and kind of knows what they want to do with their life. So studying art in this building was a wonderful experience. Graduation. Going to Ohio State. All right. The idea that somebody in my family would go to college, I was the first. My mom had a sister that lived in Columbus, Ohio. She took me with her to go visit her sister. Somebody in our family, a distant cousin, was going to Ohio State. My aunt suggested we go over to the campus and see him. I walked on a campus. I'd never even heard the word campus. And I smelled the turpentine and the oil paint coming from the art building. I was seduced. I was going to go to college and I was going to study art. That's Hayes Hall at Ohio State, which became my home. My mom insisted that I figure out some kind of way that I would be able to make a living. So I got my degree in art education. I'm so happy I listened to my mom, because of all of the people that I've taught with over the years, there have been a lot of people. Very few of them have any knowledge of how people learn. You get hired on the university level based on the quality of your work, the number of exhibitions you have, and also, frankly, what's in at the moment. So I'm happy that I got hired at all these colleges, but I think in terms of the students I've come to know and love, I think what meant more to them was that I had some background in how to talk to somebody about their work. I've studied with some very famous guys, and basically they would just say it looks great, but not really go into detail about why. And I always wanted to know what I was buying. I mean, I think art education, like all education, in the end, it's a product. And that you have a right to know what you're paying for and what you're getting. That seems really radical to think of now. But as a parent, I think that's really the question you want to ask is, what does this thing called the education my kid is getting, what does it consist of? I met this guy in a bar. He said, like so many guys in the bar do, who are you? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And I said, well, I'm going to graduate in a few months and I want to go to San Francisco. And he said, I know how to get to San Francisco. He was a Marine and he mustered out at Treasure Island. So if it wasn't love, it was something so good it lasted 20 years. And we drove to San Francisco on the night that I graduated and got married. Jump in. This is a photograph on 3rd and Market, if you know the city, of San Francisco. And it's a bank. My mom said, nobody's going to cash your wedding checks unless you open an account. I went in there and I opened a savings account. And they said, well, why did you pick our bank? And I said, because I hope to be working nearby. And they said, oh, you don't have a job? And I said, no, we just got married yesterday and we just drove into town. And they said, well, we have an opening. I said, you would never want to hire me. I really needed like a tutor to get through bonehead math. And they said, you know, that doesn't matter anymore. We have this machine, it's called a computer. This is 1959 in August. This computer was half the size of this room with one tiny woman in front of it, furiously typing away and big cards popping out of it. And it's true. I got that job. They needed me to start that day. So I went out to the car and told my husband I'd been offered a job. And after he got over the shock, he said, well, nobody's offered me one, so you better take it. So I got out of sandals and jeans and into hose and heels in this Hudson, which is what we were driving, a gift from my dad. So I stayed there. He went and rented an apartment, that top floor of 1058 DeHaro Street in San Francisco. And where you see the garage, that was my little studio. And that was the incredible neighborhood. Ferlinghetti, that owned City Lights bookstore, was our neighbor, and I had to walk by his house to go get the bus to go to the bank. And he always invited us to come to parties, so I met Kenneth Patchen, Kenneth Rexroth, all of the sort of beat poets. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. San Francisco was everything I thought it would be and even more. So 1 year later, I decided to go to graduate school. And I started graduate school at the San Francisco Art Institute. The fabulous Richard Diebenkorn was my teacher. Great guy, but not a great teacher. I just knew too much about what I needed somebody to really talk to me, and I didn't understand much of what he said. So I think because I had that degree in art ed, I had the courage to go to the office and ask for my money back. It had never happened before. They gave me my money back, and I took the money and I went to Berkeley. And another thing you should do if you're going to go to graduate school, take courses in that department you want to get into. Tell this to your kids and your grandkids. So you get to know some of the faculty, and then when you apply for graduate school, you're not a stranger, and you kind of figure out who hangs out with who and who the secretaries are for the department and the politics of it all. So Berkeley had a strange way of letting you in. They put everybody that wanted to be in graduate school in painting in one room on a Saturday morning, shut the door, and you were to have a painting finished at 5 p.m. They came and took that painting, put it down in the gallery. The faculty came in the next day and voted whether you got in or not. And it ended up being, in a way, strangely fair in that it wasn't so much about your grades from that other school. It was really about the work that you did that day. There were 2 fights, not with women, but 2 different sets of guys got into a fight because it was the jump shout, let it all hang out period where they were big brushes and splashing, and somebody got some paint on somebody else's painting. Not the right color, not the right shape. So this is something from graduate school. Paint is so expensive, and I had access to Foster and Kleiser billboard. They gave it free to graduate students. So part of my paintings were done with collage with these Foster and Kleiser billboard sections. So then this incredible thing happened. I won the Eisner Prize. It was money, real money. We could buy a truck, go to New York City. I stopped in Ohio to see that teacher, gave her copies of my degrees, and she helped me again. She said, well, what are you going to do when you get to New York City? It's like, I don't know. The goal is to get to New York City, and then we'll figure something out. And she said, no. I read in the New York Times that there's job openings in Northport, New York. That's in a place called Long Island. So why don't you call Northport Public Schools and see if there are any openings for art teachers? I didn't have anything else working for me, so I called the first day we were there. They hired me over the phone. I think they hired me because 1, I said I had a degree in art education, and 2, UC Berkeley is like a magic name, which I did not know. So I got hired. I taught in Northport, New York for 1 year. I'd still be there if they would have hired my husband. On the weekends, we went into New York City and stayed at the Chelsea Hotel. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Chelsea, but during the 60s, when I was there, Arthur Miller was there, Salvador Dali was there, Rauschenberg was there, you name it. Everybody that came into New York, it was the cheapest place to stay, the most interesting, and it was on, let's see, 23rd? Between 7th and 8th. So you had both subways right there. And one day I was in the elevator with Salvador Dali and Arthur Miller. and Arthur Miller, I came up to his shoulder, and Salvador Dali came up to my shoulder. And I just thought, it's like I could die now. It's like where's Henry? Where's that camera? That's when I needed a camera. One night at the Chelsea, we got a phone call, and it was Berkeley asking me if I would like to come back and teach. Now that's a funny thing too, because you can only have one New York year and you're a New York artist. They wanted to hire a New York artist. That's how it works. And while I was in graduate school, I started a job, and I'm showing you this slide because it was another one of those, was it luck? Was it fate? I am a Gentile hired to teach at Temple Emmanuel in San Francisco because I had a degree in art education and a degree from Berkeley. And they soon learned I knew nothing of Judaism. They asked me to build an ark, and I built one with the kids that was Noah, and they meant the ark to hold the covenant. So they said, you've got to meet with the rabbi. And so the rabbi said, it's too complicated. I wouldn't know where to begin. I'm just going to tell you the simplest version I can of what it is to be a Jew. Here it is. We don't believe in heaven. We don't believe in hell. We believe that every decision you make on earth, you're going to create your own heaven or your own hell. So think about it a lot. When you invite somebody in to your paradise, how will their behavior affect your paradise? And then he said, by the way, what is your idea of paradise? And I told him it was pretty biblical. It was Eden. And I just saw that wherever I would live, whatever I would paint was going to be about Eden. And that stayed with me and changed my life. And who I let in is a big decision, because I really do feel so blessed that my life gets to be lived in heaven, called Eden, here in Tucson. I mean, Eden was a desert. And I'll show you pictures of my house and how this one 15-minute conversation with a rabbi made my whole work change. I knew what the work was going to be about. It brought in my childhood with my great aunt and my grandmother of having to work in the garden. It all now came around where I realized how much I love botany, how much I love plants, how important plants are to everything in the world. So, oh, that's the Chelsea Hotel. That place is so famous. This is me. Where were the girls? My God, I went to school with fabulous women artists. But these are my colleagues. We're all sort of in the same age group, and we're the new hires at Berkeley. And yeah, I smoked. Must have thought I was so cool. So the work was beginning to change. This was the craziest time to be in Berkeley that you could ever imagine. This is Vietnam. This is marches in the street. This is barricades everywhere and tear gas in the air. Women were forming groups, especially Mothers for Peace. Most of the older women I knew were in this group, and they were marching. They really, endangered their health. People were shooting at marchers. They were throwing things at them. And young mothers, older mothers, they were on the march. And I did a series. I guess this is sort of the most feminist I've been in terms of how it shows in my work. But I was friends through the faculty, one of my faculty professors. His best buddy was from Australia. And he talked to me a lot about kangaroos and how peaceful they were. And crazy people in Europe, in America, captured them and taught them to fight. And so that's what this is about. And they couldn't teach the males because the males bit them. But they could teach the females, and the crowd did not know. So boxing kangaroos were all over the world as like a circus act at that time. So that's the story behind that piece. I was really interested in just the mythology of people behaving like animals, giving animals a bad name. But the idea of transformation, of people wanting to be something they were not. Now, Berkeley was changing at this time. If you didn't paint in a sort of Hans Hofmann abstract expressionist way, I felt they would let me go. This was a faculty show, and I showed something figurative, and I figured, well, it has to come out. But then it turns out that other faculty members were secretly working figuratively, and that they'd let go of abstract expressionism. Pop art was entering in, that was that period in America. So I kept my job. And this always made me, this was a reaction to some Life magazine article on a woman in New York that wanted to look like her cat. So she had an incredible amount of plastic surgery done. If you remember that. This is the piece that changed everything. One of my best friends at Berkeley, we used to critique each other's work before the big critiques with the faculty. So if there was something that looked wrong in my painting, her job was to point it out in time that I could fix it. And I did the same thing for her. I was working on this painting. The woman didn't have long hair, she had short hair. Her breasts weren't showing. And my friend's name was Bela Feldman. And Bela came into the studio and said, Barbara, I've just been diagnosed with breast cancer. They're going to try to save me by removing a breast. So would you make this painting about me? She had long, dark hair. So that's what this painting is about. Losing someone my age, first time it happened, to breast cancer. So we're now in our 30s, maybe 32, 33, somewhere in there. So this piece, everything about it felt right. And she wanted it to be about Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, where that's bottom, and it was about going back into the earth and nurturing the earth with your body. So this piece was shown in San Francisco, and it was in Artforum magazine and in Art in America. I got letters from all over the globe of people who worship Gaia. I learned about so many strange sects of the earth, cults that worshiped women. Very interesting, it's all out there. But this painting was a big change. At this point, we had applied to adopt a baby, and they said it would be 2 years. Instead, it was 9 months. And I had agreed to a major exhibition in San Francisco. We had a dog, a Doberman, that was going to have her puppies. My husband had agreed to help his friend start a business in Alaska, and he just couldn't turn him down. So the baby arrived. He was 1 month old, no husband, a dog with 8 puppies. I don't know. Women are incredible, especially in their 30s, can do anything.